Hello, welcome to KAJOS Consultants. I'm Joshua, and today we are going to look at how we can calculate the food consumption score. Food consumption score is one of the indicators of food security projects. So these are projects that are normally being undertaken during the humanitarian crisis just to cushion people from some of the suffering they are undergoing through. And in such cases, we'll be in a position also to assess some of their food items that they might have consumed within a 7-day recall period, and after which we'll be in a position to see whether the food consumption score in that area is a poor, is borderline, or acceptable. And so these are some of the things you're going to look at. So the first set of information that you need to have when you're calculating the food consumption score is to have the food food groups and the food items alongside their definitive weights. So these food items and the definitive weights, the one I'm going to use are the one that have been defined by the World Food Program, that is the WFP, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, that is the FAO. So we have main staples which are assigned the definitive weight of two, and the food items under that, as you can see here, is the maize, rice, sorghum, other cereals, and this goes all the way. You have pulses, definitive weight of 3, goes all the way up to condiments. These are the definitive weight of 0. And we have here spices, tea, coffee. The reason as to why they are defined or they are assigned a definitive weight of 0 is because these are some of the items that someone can easily go without. So the main data, this is the main data that I have. This is data that was collected from a certain set of individuals in a certain location. So by the end of this session, also we'll be in a position also to tell whether this is a baseline data or an endline survey. So these are items. Someone is being asked whether you consume cereals and cereal products, either indicate yes, and if yes. So if yes, then within the 7 days or in the last 7 days, how many days did you consume such product? Then the person will be positioned to say or to indicate either 4 days, 5 days, so any day between 0 to 7. So where 0 means the person did not consume the product at all, and the data goes all the way to where we have the organ meat and the condiments and those other items, so I will be showing you. So we'll just copy this data and have it in a separate window where I'm going to have all those food items and also the number of days which those food items were consumed. So in this data, we are going to, we have our data here, where we have the cereals, we have the vitamins, and all those food items that were listed in the questionnaire when gathering this data during the field data collection. So the first thing I'm going to do is to classify this data and assign them, whether they are under main staples, under vegetables, under fruits, under milk and fish, under pulses, under milk products, under oil, and under condiments, as I have shown you in these food groups and food items as defined by the WFP and the FAO alongside the definitive weights. So the first one is cereals, products, and cereal. If we come here and we look at sorghum, maize, spaghetti, pasta, injera, bread, rice, those one will fall under main staples where we have maize, rice. Then the next one, we check out vitamins, rich food, and tubers, where we have pumpkins, carrot, orange, sweet potatoes. So we'll also check whether there's the main tubers and other tubers, we have them under main staples. Our next group, we'll also check on vegetables, where we have dark green leafy vegetables, other vegetables. Then this one will also fall under vegetables and leaves. Then we have fruits. They will classify under the fruit because we have the other rich fruits Then you have other fruits, we classify under fruits. So we'll do all the way up to where we have the condiments and have those data. So these are the number of days which these people might have consumed product, and in areas where you are seeing a 0, then it means the person did not consume that product within the last 7 days as earlier indicated. So our next step will now to come up and define the groups. Have all the 9 food groups that have as have been defined by the FAO and the WFP, and classify such groups under each group item. Our first will be cereals, vitamins, and white tubers. This one have been classified under main food staples, and we have to have them under one group. So the group will be main food staple, and then what will we do to have all these food items to fall under one group? Then we'll simply, let me just introduce the on-screen keyboard so that you can see what we are doing as we go through this. So we'll introduce the table, list all the food groups as indicated here, then insert a table to cover the entire data set so that our information, once we have done one column, then the information will be auto-filled as through the Excel function or the formula that we'll use for this particular calculation. So the first one I'm going to do is to introduce an equal sign. So its equal sign is here. Then we tap sum. Then what do we do? Under main staples, we have 3 food groups. Then we're going to click on the first one, then drag up to where the main staples end. We have those 3. Then simply click on Enter key. Enter key is on your keyboard. Click on Enter key, then that information will be auto-filled until where the our data set ends. The data set, we had a data set of 355 beneficiaries for this. So vegetable will do the same. Click on is equal sign, then type sum, then double click on sum, then vegetables, we drag, there are only 2, then click on Enter key. So that information will be auto-filled until the end. Then we have the next one is fruits. Fruits also we have 2, equal sign, sum, double click on sum, then look at where we have fruits, there are 2, then click on Enter key to get the results. So the same will apply for the rest until we reach the condiments. Let me just have the condiments. Condiments, it was only 1. So even if we come here and then insert that formula of the condiments, sum, then the condiments, it was only 1, then we can enter to get the result. So this is how we are going to get all these for all the food groups. So once we have done this, then you can easily now get go to the definitive ways and get such food items for each case. So the first one was main staples. And our results here, what we are going to get to at the end is the sum of all this data as indicated by this such food items that we have for this particular data. So what is going to do is simply to have an equal sign where we have the sum and get the sum so that we at the end we're now going to get the food consumption score, and under that food consumption score you'll get the value for that. But just before that, there's something that we need to do, because we'll find, as I earlier indicated, this food, this number of days should not or must not exceed 7. So in the event the data, a particular entry exceeds 7, then what do you need to do? You need to convert it or reduce it to 7 or have it as 7. So that is what we are going to check using a formula that I'm just going to show you shortly. So for example, if you look at this data number 142, you have data that is having a score of 9. And in the event that the data exceeds 9, then we'll have to get it back to or reduce it to 7. So what we are going to do, we're going to have our food categories of these food groups on a separate window. And this is what we are going to do here. So in this, under each main food group or under each food groups, I'm going to do a VLOOKUP so that the data that we have only ranges between 0 to 7. So any data that is more than 7 will be returned to 7. So what do we need to do here? Just simply have an is equal sign under main food group, that is for 1, and ensure all your data have got a table, so that the remaining section of the columns will be autofilled using the Excel function or formula that we shall have inserted earlier. So we have is equal sign, then we type a VLOOKUP. So the VLOOKUP, it has already been shown here. Double click on VLOOKUP. Then which data do we need to return, or which column do we need to reference for this case? So for this case, we are going to reference this. We have to be start at number 1. Want it to return that table under main food staples. Then we insert a comma, or simply click on a comma. Then come back to where we have our data here. So under this section, we are going to have values. We're going to have our values that are assigned from number 1, from 0 to 7. So where 0 means the person did not consume such product, and 1, the person consumed that for only 1 day in the past 7 days. So we are going to have 0 to 7. Then we have which column do we want this value to return. So we will have the first column is arranging values that we have that have been defined. That is from 0 day to 7 days. Then the second column will be telling us to return those values that will be more than 7 to 7. So that's why we have the first one as column and as 7. Then the second column 0 to 7 as well, because those are the values that we need here to be returned. So these values, we are going to select all these. Then once we have selected all those values, we are going to, let me just look for the function key. So once we have selected those values, we look for the function key. So these are values that we have the F1 up to F12. So click on F4 here, so that value can be returned. So we're going to click on F4. So yeah, we're going to have F4. So once we have selected that, we are going to click on F4, so that particular value, then we have a comma. So once you have a comma, then you are going to tell this particular data to return the second column. So once you have inserted that comma, I'm going to click on and type number 2, then have another comma. So this other comma is going to tell us to, if only the value is true, then it should indicate that value. So if true and our true, we have true and false. So true is number 1, false is number 2. So you have the values to be referenced are the true values. So you have 1. Then so you are done with that, you can simply click on enter key. At that value, you'll have the number there. The same thing will apply to vegetables. Where we have the vegetables here, you're simply going to have the is equal sign. So is equal sign. So under vegetables, you have is equal sign. Then you're going to have a VLOOKUP function. So this value should then we go to where we had the data for our main food staples, because some of the data here are more than 7 or are greater than 7. If you can just scroll it through, just to look for, so like here you can see you have a value that is greater than 7. Here, yes, 15, yes, 12. So let me just go back to where we were. So under vegetable, I'm going to use the first value to get the rest of the values. I'm going to click on the first value, then have a comma. Then once I've done that comma, I'll come up to where we have our VLOOKUP values. Then the values you are returning are these other values. So select all the values, then click on F4. So once the value has been returned, the F4, that is the function key, the F4 key, then I have, then click on comma. So once you have clicked on the comma, you will type 2, because you are returning the second column, then click another comma, then will an option here will appear with the true and false. So under true and false, we are only returning the values that are true. Then simply type 1, then click enter. Just a minute, I repeat this other one. Click is equal sign. VLOOKUP. Double click on VLOOKUP. Then we come to the where we have the data. Here is the vegetable. Then click on comma. We come back here and make reference to the categories or the intervals or the data with the range at which we want this data to appear. Then click on F4. Then click on comma, then 2, comma, then 1. Because the reason as why clicking 2 is simply because we want these values to return the second column of the 2 sets that we have here. Then the number 1 here, we are going to only return the value that is true. Click on OK. Then all this data will then be auto-filled. The same will appear to the condiments. Simply click on equal sign, VLOOKUP, double click on VLOOKUP. Then under the main, we have under the condiments, we check on that, click on condiments, comma, come back to where we have the data values here, the ranges that we have already assigned. Yeah, these ones. We are going to have them all the way up to 0, 0, 1, 2. Yeah, up to there. Then click on F4, comma. we return the second column, click 2, then comma, then 1 if the value is true, then click on. So let me just, I might have messed up there, is equal sign, VLOOKUP, double click on VLOOKUP, then come to where we have our data here under the condiments, click on condiments, the first value under condiments, then comma, then we come back to where we have our values here. So let me just ensure I select them correctly, 2, 1, 0. Then click on F4, comma 2, that is the second column, then 1 if the value is true. Yeah, so we have all those values are indicated here. If you want also the one for me to simply click on is equal sign VLOOKUP, double click on VLOOKUP, then food consumption scores. So meat and fish, that is where we have. So click on the first value, then comma, then come back here. You want these values to be returned. Then click on function key number 4, F4, then comma, 2, comma, 1, then enter, and all those values will be displayed as we have them here. So our definite is here and also here if you want to make any reference to that data. So the second thing we are going to do is to check this data and assign them whether we have a poor, borderline, or whether we have either poor or acceptable, borderline, or so we have the poor food consumption scores, borderline, and all acceptable. So we can simply have another table here where we are going to assign these values. We are going to have the classification of food consumption scores. So under that, what are we going to do? We had our values. So for this food consumption here, we have where 0. We have 0 to 21. Then we have 21.5. 21.5 to 35. Then the next category that we have is above 35, or 35 and above. So we are going to have our values, the value that we are going to assign. The first one is going to be 21. We are going to have 0 as our first one. So anything that is under 0 will be considered as poor. Between 0 to 21 will be considered as poor. Then we'll have any value that is 21.5 and above will be considered as borderline. Then above 35 that we can have 35.5 will be an acceptable value. So the same thing you're going to do, we are going to have a VLOOKUP function. We have is equal sign, VLOOKUP, double click on VLOOKUP. Then our first value under the food consumption, the values you have already get here. How we get this value? We simply get the sum of all the values that we have assigned here as earlier, as I showed you earlier, how we get such values. So this one is simply going to be the sum, but under the value that you have already multiplied earlier, but the definitive weight as I indicated in the rest. So So we are going to get the sum of this value. We have a mean staples. Mean staples. So we are going to get is equal sign, then type sum. You get the sum of this value, that is an mean staple is 4, and here our main staple was assigned a value of 2. So we are going to get it but multiply it by 2. Then have a comma. Go to the second one, that is vegetables. You check vegetables here, it's a definitive of 1, multiply the vegetable by 1. Multiplication sign is on key number board number 8. That is 8 with a star. Simply click shift and star. Then we go to the third one, we multiply that by 1. We have a comma. Go to the third one, that is the fruits. Multiplies, shift star, shift 8. Then that is under fruits. We multiply by 1, which is assigned a value of 1. Clear comma. Then go to meat. Star multiply meat and fish as assigned a value of 4, comma. We go to pulses. It is assigned pulses. Pulses are assigned a value of 3. So pulses there we have value of 3. Let me just repeat that. Yeah, pulses assign a value of 3. So we start, that is the main staples. Just get the scores first, is equal sign. And try to undo this so that we have these values. Yeah, that is where we are. Pulses multiply by 3. Multiply by 3. Let's wrap that. So we'll multiply that by 3. Then we have a comma, go to milk, multiply by 4. Then we have a comma, you go to oil, multiply by oil, multiply by 0.5. Comma, you go to sugar, multiply by 5. Sugar 0.5, sorry, 0.5. You go to the next one, condiments, multiply by 0. Yeah, so once you are done with that, you can simply click on the equal sign and we'll get all the values here assigned. So that value, that formula has to be returned all through the entire segment of this data. So after that, then we can come here and assign the classification. Those ones between 0 to 21, we'll give them a poor borderline, so we can say that as poor. Food consumption score, then we have this as borderline. Then we'll have the last one as acceptable. Acceptable. So we'll here have here is equal sign is equal VLOOKUP. Then Once you have that VLOOKUP function, which value do you want to return? We want to return this first value. Then you have our comma. Then we make reference to this other section. At 0, then we have 0, poor, 21.4 borderline, and 35 more acceptable. Then we click the function key F4. Then we have a comma. Then you have 2. Then you have true. So once we are done with that, you can see the values here are being generated automatically. You have acceptable and that. Then up to this point, you can then get to know how many are acceptable, how many are borderline. Then this is where now the point where you can easily tell whether your data is a baseline or maybe you have made some achievement for that particular set of data. Then we can simply copy those 3 items there. We have poor, borderline, and acceptable. Then we can count the number of poor, the number of borderline, the number of acceptable. So here we learn to have this equal sign, then count. So we want this data to count if the data is poor or the selection is poor, it's either borderline or acceptable. So count if, then we go to our table here. So we select all that category where we have acceptable, we have poor, and you have the borderline. As that data indicates, select all the way up to where our data ends. This is where our data ends. Then we have, once you have selected that, we have is comma. Then we make a reference to the poor. Since that was our first selection, then we simply click on enter. We'll find the poor 32. Then if you want to get the others, we simply double click, place our cursor below the first one, then simply double click, and we have 259, and this data should also add to 355. And this is simply by checking. Will be in a position you can just test this and see whether your formula begin. All the data in that section has to be highlighted, all of them. So your formula begins at the first one, and also check the second one and see if everything has been counted. Then that's one you have to, all the formulas. Just a repeat of that. So all the formulas have to end there, but has to begin with the first one. So we can still adjust that to begin. And the first one, then we have the last one, that is the acceptable. It has to, they all have to begin at the first one. So we can check also on that and ensure it ends there. So we enter. So we get to 61 plus 62, that will be around 323. If you are to 32, get 353, and that's what our data read. So this is reading 356 because of the headers or the columns that we have. That should be. So we have more people under acceptable. This way the food consumption score is a bit good. And let's see, if you look at this, we'll find in most cases this data that was collected during the endline survey. So at that point, we call child. And if you find this information so useful, simply click on the subscription tab below to subscribe to this channel so that you can be getting more of these updates whenever we upload them.